Hello, it's Anna Becker, and today I'm going to be telling you guys about the Pythagoras theory and what it is. Let's start with the basics. Pythagoras of Samos was a famous Greek mathematician born around the 508 and 572 BC. Pythagoras had a great impact in maths, music, and astronomy. Also, he was one of the greatest thinkers of all time. So, on to what the Pythagorean Theorem actually is. So, the Pythagorean Theorem says that if you take a right-angled triangle, so pretty much a triangle that has an angle of 90 degrees, so you'll take the bottom length squared plus the height squared, it equals to the hypotenuse squared, also known as the diagonal. We usually write the length as A, the height as B, as the hypotenuse as C. Okay, so here's an easy example. So let's just say that our bottom equals to 4 and our height equals to 3, but now we're going to try to find the hypotenuse. So we're just going to write C because that's what we usually write it as. So if the formula says a squared plus b squared equals c squared, firstly we're going to have to square out our numbers. So 4 squared plus 3 squared is going to equal to c squared. 4 squared equals to 16. 3 squared equals to 9. So then 16 plus 9 equals 25. Now 25 equals to c squared, but we don't want to find c squared. We just want to find c. So really what we're just going to have to do now is we're going to have to find the square root of 25, which equals to 5. So that gives us our final answer that equals to 5. Our hypotenuse is 5. Now, it's funny because you can see that it goes 3, 4, 5. This does not work for every single one. It's not you're going to get 9, 10, and that's going to be 11. It's really just for these numbers. So this is a really easy example. Now I'm going to show you another, a bit harder example. Okay, so here's a more tricky one. So, just like last time, we have the bottom length 5 and the height 12, and we need to find what c is. So, once again, the formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So, 5 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. We know that 5 times 5 is 25, and that 12 times 12 is 144. 25 plus 144 equals 169. Now, 169 equals c squared. Like the other time, we don't want to know what c squared is. We want to know what just c is. So, we're going to find the square root of 169, which equals to 13. And that gives us our final answer, that c equals 13. So, remember like last time we got 3, 4, 5. Here it's totally different. It's 12, 5, 13. So it can be totally different for each of the examples. Now, in some cases, what if we already have the hypotenuse, but we don't have one of the other sides, which will happen sometimes. So, we're going to keep looking at the formula, which says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So, we have c squared, which is 15, and we have b, which is 9. But now we're just looking for a. So, we're just going to write it down just like last time. We're going to write a squared plus 9 squared, which is b, equals 15 squared, which is c. So, a squared equals a squared. 9 squared equals 81, and 15 squared equals 125. So this is where it gets different. Instead of us just find the square root, we're going to have to do something else because we're not trying to look for the hypotenuse, we're trying to look for one of the sides. So, one way to do this is we're going to take 81 from both sides, so 81 minus 125 is going to be 144. So we know that that's a squared, 124. But for us to find just a, we're going to need to find the square root of 144, which is over here. And that shows that it is 12. So we know that a equals to 12. This is going to happen sometimes, but you just need to remember that you're pretty much doing the invert of the other one. To find the hypotenuse, you're adding, and to find b or a, you're just going to subtract. Now, if we're trying to find b, we're going to do the exact same thing as we did over here, but we're just going to have the a written down and us trying to figure out what b is. Here's an example of a word problem. So, the length from the building to the ladder is 6 units. And the length from the bottom of the ladder to the third floor is 8 units. What is the total length of the ladder? And here's how we're going to do it. So, if the word problem said that the length from the building to the ladder is 6 units, and from the bottom of the ladder to the third floor is 8 units, we need to try to find the length of the ladder itself. So we have a formula up here that we've already discussed a couple of times, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now we're just going to write it down just like last time. So we have 8 squared plus 6 squared equals c squared. So we're going to find the squares of each of those, which is 64 and 36. We're going to add them up to get 100. Now we know that c squared equals to 100, but remember, we're only trying to find c, and that's too big of a number. So we're going to get 100, we're going to get the square root of 100, which is 10, and that tells us that the total length of the ladder is 10 units. So now we're going to be talking about something else. We're going to be talking about if this triangle is a right triangle or not. Because remember, we can only use the Pythagoras theory if the triangle is a right triangle. So, over here we have all of our lengths. And we have to know that the longest side is always going to be the hypotenuse. So, 26 is the longest, so we can say that that's C. And 10 and 24 can either be A or B. It does not really matter. So, to find if a triangle is a right triangle or not, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take the two sides and you're going to square them. So over there, as you can see, 10 squared equals 100 and 24 squared equals 576. Then you're going to take both of your answers and you're going to add them up. So that's what we get, 676. So now that's that. Then you're going to take your hypotenuse, the longest side, which is 26, and you're going to square it. So 26 times 26 is 676. And if you want to check if that's right again, the square root of 676 is 26. So as you can see, these are both right. These are the correct answers because we got the same answer over here as we got over here. But let's just say if it was another answer, that would show that that is not a right triangle. But since we got the both answers, we do know that this is a right triangle. Okay, what about this example? So here we have another triangle that we don't know if it's a right one or if it is a right triangle or not. So here we have 15, 16, and 8. So we know that the longest side is a hypotenuse. So obviously 16 is a hypotenuse, otherwise known as C. And this could be A and this could be B. It really does not matter as long as we know that this is C. So first of all, just like last time, we're going to square these two numbers. And 8 squared is 64 and 15 squared is 225. Now, after getting our squared, we are going to add them both together and we get 289. Let's leave it at that. Let's go to 16. 16 squared is 270 and 256. So obviously, you can see that there's something absolutely wrong here because because 289 is not the same as 256. So this shows, and the square root of 289 is 17, while the square root of 256 is 16. So this shows that this is not a right triangle. Thank you for listening, and I really hope you have learned and enjoyed today's lesson on the Pythagoras theorem.